in Chapter 3 of the Thinking Critically textbook. And this week we're going to focus on solving problems. Well, for pretty much any problem, there's a common set of steps. The first step is to identify the problem. The second step is to start developing alternatives to this problem. Then obviously you're going to select the best alternatives from the alternatives given. You'll want to implement your alternative, and then you're going to evaluate it. Does it work? Yes, then we're done. Does it work? No, then we've got to go back to some point on the drawing board, so to speak. What we often do, however, is act very impulsively without thought or consideration. Like, oh, this is hard. I'm just going to quit school. I don't have enough time. I'm just going to quit. Or we do what someone else suggests without seriously evaluating the suggestion. Tell me what you think I should do, and then you take their suggestion without really thinking about it. Or sometimes we do nothing and wait for Vince to make the decision for us, and that's really the worst thing to do often. Effective problem solvers typically pass through all the steps, guys. They'll go through all of them, but they don't necessarily go through them, and let me back it up, in this perfect little circle. They'll identify it and develop some alternatives, but while they're developing the alternatives, they're like, no, we need to go back and really refine what this problem is. And then they would develop some more alternatives, and while they're selecting the best one, they may say, you know what, let's kind of change this one alternative to include a little bit of this other one. Then while they're implementing it, they may say there's other problems. They may have to go back to the beginning. Do you get the idea? It's not necessarily this perfect flow, but a lot of the back and forth. However, they really don't skip any of the steps. They just may move very fluidly through each of them. So, if you accept the problem, the first thing you want to do is say, I'm going to tackle this problem head on. Let me list the benefits. Let me give you an example of a problem. You have a lot of debt. Well, let's list the benefits of tackling or accepting this problem. If I get out of debt, that's going to free up, say, I don't know, $500 a month to just have $500 a month to have spending money or just cash extra after I pay off all of my debt. Formalize your acceptance. This is really important, guys, and we rarely do this. Even writing a little contract for yourself and putting it up is a big help. So you might want to write a contract and say, I pledge to be out of debt by blank, and you may leave that blank until you start really investigating the problem. Accept responsibility for your life. This is the part where you're like, okay, I'm not going to blame anyone else. I'm not going to blame circumstances. I'm going to definitely take control of things and stop placing blame on others. Create a worst case scenario. For instance, your worst case scenario of not paying off your debt is eventually you just get so far under that you would have to file for bankruptcy, which means you wouldn't be able to get credit again for several years. And that makes it hard to buy houses, buy cars, so on and so forth. And then finally, identify what's holding you back. What might be holding you back? Well, probably, for me, I would say it's probably that I like to spend. I like to buy stuff. And that's the biggest thing that's holding me back. Or maybe a fear of actually looking at the finances and seeing how big of a problem we're actually in. So, step one, let's really figure out what is the problem. What do you know about your situation? In this case, who are the people involved? Well, for me, if it were credit card debt, it might be just me, or perhaps me and a spouse or someone like that. Who will benefit from solving this problem? Well, everybody in my household would. Who can help me solve this problem? Well, I can. I could also go to my bank. I belong to a credit union, and they give free kind of like financial counseling. What are the various parts and dimensions of the problem? Well, wow. With debt, there's a lot, aren't there? There's all kinds of things to consider. What are my strengths and resources? As you can see, you can go through each of these and really, really, really kind of narrow that problem and see all the different avenues that you have. What results am I aiming for in this situation? Well, I would say my goal in this would be to be debt-free and to not, and I'm gonna refine that a little bit. I want to be credit card debt-free. Maybe I don't mind having a payment on my house, and maybe I don't mind having a car payment. But I want to be debt-free of debts that really aren't giving me anything. So I'm going to be free of any credit card debt or any student loan debt. How can I define the problem? View it from different perspectives, identify the components, and state the problem clearly and specifically. And that's a tough one. clearly and specifically, what's the problem? You may say, my problem is I don't make enough money, or I'm in debt, when really the problem is our own spending and lack of control over finances. All right, step 2, what are the alternatives? What are the boundaries of the problem situation, and what are the alternatives? Boundaries are limits within the problem that cannot be changed, but make sure they can't be changed. Like for one, you might say, well, one of my boundaries is that I only make this much money. Well, can you change that? Can you take on a part-time job just for a year or two to help pay off all the debt? Or can someone else in your family do that? Or you may say, well, our bills are very fixed. Well, are they? Let's go through and see if there's some that we can get rid of. So make sure that before you say that they can't be changed, that they absolutely cannot be. What are the alternatives? Well, actually, while I'm thinking about this, it brings up alternatives. Getting a part-time job, cutting back on things, and brainstorm. Bring some other people in. When it says change your location, that doesn't mean move, but change your perspective. Look at it from the outside in. If someone looked at my spending habits from the outside in, they might say, wow, you guys go out to eat an awful lot, and that's costing you a lot of money, so you may want to think about that as an alternative. Oh, you're right. Great idea. What are the advantages and or disadvantages of each alternative? So for instance, I would have to look at each alternative. Getting a part-time job. Well, for me, that probably wouldn't work very well because I work a lot of hours in this job and I have a child. He's 16 but not yet driving, and I wouldn't be able to just up and go. I've got to pick him up and take him places, so on and so forth. So that may not be the best alternative. I might say, hey, why don't I have my son help? He's got a part-time job. He could take over one of the bills. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that? Well, advantages are it's going to help us, right? Definitely help us in paying off some stuff. And then also a good advantage of that is teaching him some responsibility. But some disadvantages are, oh, poor kid, that's his part-time job and his spending money. So you get the idea. Often you're going to find, I need to find some more information about this particular alternative. One thing for sure I would do, one alternative is to make a budget and cut out things that I don't need. And I would probably go and look for additional information. For instance, what other phone carriers could I use? What other internet providers could I use? And would it actually be cheaper when we get down to really looking into it? So when I make my budget, that's a lot of alternatives within the alternative. So, step 4, what is the solution? Which alternatives will I pursue? And what steps can I take to act on the alternatives? So when I evaluate all my alternatives, I've decided that 1, I am going to cut back on certain things. For instance, we're not going to go out to eat. And I'm going to be very specific about that. Only out to eat maybe twice a month. And I'm going to make a budget and stick to it. So on and so forth. And then the steps that you'll take to actually do that. So then you look back and say, well, how well is that solution working? What is my evaluation? I'm going to compare my results with my goals and get other perspectives. And I might notice some things like, I overlooked the fact that sometimes we really like to splurge, and sometimes I have to. Or maybe I overlooked putting in money in my budget for things like haircuts, things that you have to have. And how could I have done this differently? So this is a chance to refine everything and make it work even better. It's a good idea to revisit your solution early on, several times early, so you can go back and make some adjustments. And then maybe a month out, 2 months out, so on and so forth. Guys, that's it for this chapter. Pretty straightforward. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your discussions. Bye-bye.